Welcome to the Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. So today I'm joined by another amazing woman, and today is going to be the first of a three-part series around journeys into motherhood and how that journey into parenthood can look different for different people. So today I'm joined by Rebecca. Rebecca's an avid reader. She's a wife, a mum, a dog lover, and thank you very much for joining me today, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So today we're going to talk about, your journey into becoming a mum. And you didn't have, well, I don't want to use the term normal, so you didn't have, I guess, the most typical route into motherhood.
Yeah, and it's good that you're doing this series because there's so many ways to get where you want to be, and everyone has such different life stories, and ours might not even be the typical...
Yeah, the typical abnormality.
Yeah. So, where would you like me to start?
So let's start at the beginning. So you knew from a young age that it was unlikely that you would be able to have children of your own. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So I knew from an early age that I probably wouldn't be able to have my own, or there was a very small chance. And then my husband, he's comfortable with me sharing, saying that he had early, very young childhood cancer, so he knew that he'd
likely to be fertility issues there as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when we went through our journey, we started with IVF.
So with that, just before you, with that, even though you knew it was going to be difficult for you to have children, having children was still a priority for you.
Yes, we had big discussions, my husband and I, and we still felt that we would really like to care for a child. Mm-hmm. So in that, being a parent, you're obviously supporting someone and pouring that energy to help them be who they are and guiding them. So as a parent, and we really thought, well, what is a parent?
Yeah.
You're there guiding and supporting another little being that's their own personality. And so, yeah, we felt that we would really like to put that energy into that.
No. So you knew from early on in your relationship. Can I ask, at what point in the relationship did you both discuss the fertility issues, and that may be, was that going to have long-term implications on you staying together?
It's a bit of a funny story.
Oh, good. They're my favourite.
It was just one of those natural moments. Like, it was just like over breakfast, and it just ended up coming out, and we both were like, oh, really? Oh, me too. And it was just really amazing because you can sometimes be a bit nervous about
Well, that's
that.
what I was going to ask. Were you apprehensive in sharing that because, what would that mean?
If you know me, I'm just like, this is how it is. I can't change it.
Yeah.
And you just got to hope for the best and just say, if they accept you, they accept you. And if not, then
move on.
You just enjoy the time and keep going. And
it takes a lot of trust to have that conversation, I imagine, though.
Yeah, especially if that's affected previous relationships.
Yeah.
Like, lucky for me that it hadn't, and it just worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So how long had you been together when you decided that actually now it was time to start thinking about becoming parents?
Well, I said to Miles, we'd obviously, because we knew that we'd have difficulties, that once we're married, we'd give it a month or two, and then we'd start booking things in just to see where we'd have to start, how long it would take, and how to, look into that journey.
So what were your first steps?
Well, the first step, we obviously had to get a referral to IVF, and then and all the specialist doctors and things like that. And so we ended up doing that first, and that obviously took a few months to get into because, some specialists are very booked out.
Yeah.
And then they did all their battery of tests and things like that, and then they did our plan with us. So it's a lot of, you do quite a few things and then nothing for a long time. And then at the same time, I had big discussions with Mars just to say that I really wanted to look at this as well, because IVF, you've got such a low chance. Like, they can't give you exact percentages and everyone's different. But it's kind of approximately maybe 30% chance that you might.
Yeah. So you said that with IVF, it's kind of everything goes and then there's long waiting periods. How do you kind of hold those waiting periods?
I don't know. I just train my brain to set and forget. I'm like, I put it in my diary. This is when we're going to review it, and then I just get on with other stuff.
Yeah,
But my husband's different, a bit different.
Yeah, I think my husband would probably have the same kind of mentality of that. Right, well, we've got it booked in the calendar. It's there. I've done what I need to do, and now we'll just leave it. And I would be obsessing over it. Like, I don't think I'd be able to let it go.
Yeah. And I get that, and it is quite common for people. And as I said, my husband was thinking about it a bit more. I'm just maybe different, and I just was like, you do what you can up until a point, and then there's nothing you can do. You just physically have to wait, and people cope with that differently. I'm like, right, I've done that. Booked in, done, move on, next thing, revisit that. That's like, yeah.
Yeah. So while you had this, so you'd got the IVF process underway, and then you wanted to look at the process of adoption as well.
Yes. So I also booked that in. So you have to book in for an information seminar first, and then they tell you everything. And they set your expectations. And
so tell me a little bit about that, about setting those expectations.
As I said to you, my most vivid memory is when they bring you all in, you're all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited to look at this and thinking, oh, yeah.
Was there part of you that was looking around going, oh, my God, these are my competition. I'm going to kneecap them in the car park.
No. I
really don't advocate kneecapping people in the car park to steal babies.
I know you would never.
Yeah.
No, I never thought of it like that. I just thought, oh, we're all here to get information.
Yeah.
I get a bit shy, and I'm just like, I'll just focus on what I'm here for, get the information, and we can think about it. And the first thing they say, they sit you down, they stare you in the eye, and they say, expect not to get a child. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah. How did it feel hearing that?
I was like, that makes sense. At first you're like a bit stunned and shocked, but then you're like, okay, yeah, because they say we work for the child, not for you, and we support the biological parents and as much as possible, and then we go through the process of supporting them and relinquishment and what we need to do with them first, and then we look for the most suitable and the best option for the child. Yeah. So we work for the child.
With that relinquishment, do you know, and it's okay if you don't know, because I'm putting you on the spot, do you know how long, so when a woman or when a couple do relinquish a baby, do they have a cooling off period where they can change their mind?
I believe they do before that they're placed with the adoptive parents. I'm not fully up to speed on all of that process. Yeah. The department are wonderful. They'll be able to guide people through that.
And which department is it?
The Department of Children's Services. I forget the exact name.
CPFS still? Child and
Family
Protective Services.
Yeah. That department. And so the whole process takes at least 4 months after the child's born, and they go into pre-adoptive foster care while they're obviously helping the relinquishing parent and parents. And so during that time, they'd obviously really keep monitoring that and helping them in case there was any little doubt or anything that they needed to work through.
Okay, thanks for that. It took us off track there a minute, sorry. So you went to that first information session. What happens after that?
So
they've told you, chances are you're wasting your time here today.
Well, it is so different for everyone as well. This is what they explain. Like, some people, they might be called up the day after they're put on the prospective adoptive parent list. They might be called up the next day. Other people, they might not get the call.
Yeah.
So it's so varied, and it really does depend on the child. So after they've said that, they say you have to do some seminars.
Mm-hmm.
So there is 2 to 3 further seminars that you need to do, and you pay for those ones and you book them in.
Are they expensive?
They're approximately about $500 for a couple each. And then they explain that process. They also explain that you have to fill in a form to say that you would like to go through the process. That you then fill in at the end of all your seminars, you fill in an application form and pay, I think it's around $1,000.
So at the time that you're going through IVF, because from everything I've understood, IVF is not necessarily the cheapest process either. So you're going through IVF and you're paying out $2,000-$3,000 to get the process for adoption started at the same time.
Yes.
And
so we have been fortunate enough.
I know they say children are expensive, but normally it's after they're born.
And so you can choose to apply for local or international adoption. We chose to just apply for local adoption, because with international adoption you have to maintain their culture to a high standard as much as possible. So really immerse them in that culture, because that's another extra loss. And I felt I may not possibly be able to do that to the standard I would want. And I just wanted to focus on local adoption first, because they can even be from different backgrounds as well.
And that's, I think, probably something that's really important there is that experience of loss. So, when you've got a child who has experienced multiple loss that comes with adoption, that loss of culture, it's an additional layer. So I think that it's really interesting that you raise that, because when I was growing up, I knew somebody who their family adopted a little girl from Korea, but there was nothing there that they offered for that child around actually going back to Korea or learning the language or spending time with other people from that culture. So that it is such an added layer of complexity around how you make sure that you do that and do that well, keeping that child at the forefront.
Yeah, but as I said, we didn't really investigate that too much. So there is a whole seminar on all of that, and they have their international adoption team that will help you with that and answer questions. And there are lots of people that do both and do look at international, and even with local, they can be from different backgrounds as well. So
even with local adoptions, it's still something to think about.
Yeah, but at least they haven't had that move from a different country.
Yes.
So they explain all that process and the costs and what you do, and then as part of the application form, you also have to do a full medical, full police clearance, background checks, or driving checks. They do all financial checks. They do every single check. There's not an inch that is not checked, which you have to prepare yourself for that.
I was going to say, how did that feel?
Well, it's kind of invasive, but they do their best to try and make it not feel that. But they have to be thorough, because they've got to do the best for the child.
Yeah.
And they obviously don't want to put the child in a situation where it's they haven't checked everything.
Yeah.
And then on top of all of that, then you do. So once you've gone to all the seminars that you're going to, and you fill in your form and you submitted all those things, then you have to have 6 visits by an assessor, and they're 2-hour visits spaced 2 weeks apart at your home.
Oh, wow, that's full on.
Yeah, so and they part of that they ask you in-depth questions about your family, your relationships, about your preparation for parenthood. They even ask, how intimate you are and how often with your partner, and there's lots of questions about your relationship.
How is that relevant?
Well, it's probably more to do with your relationship and just exploring your relationship. They cover everything.
Yeah. How did that feel, answering those questions to, well, I suppose by the end of it she wasn't a complete stranger, but at the start of it she was.
Yeah, so you just answer it. Yeah. I think for me, I don't like being assessed at the best of times.
No.
It's not that I have anything to hide. I just feel...
It's none of your business.
Well, I just, as I said, I'm a very shy person, so it's just to do with that. It's I don't have anything to hide. So we obviously just went through everything. And then they do their report at the end of it. And they submit all the, because you fill in paperwork with them.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're chatting to them, and they look around your house, they assess your house as well.
So what's that process like where they're assessing the house?
Well, they just look at potential, things that could cause a risk to, child safety.
Mm-hmm.
So where you might have to baby-proof or put up protective barriers or things like that before you're placed with a child.
So, and I was speaking to your husband about this, and he was saying that your assessor came up with some interesting suggestions for where your house may not have been baby-proof.
Yes, and I was mortified because we have a laundry chute from the top bathroom down to the laundry. And my husband, the assessor, said, "Oh, that would need to be covered." He's like, "Oh yeah, just install a bungee cord." And I'm dying inside. I'm like, "No, definitely won't be doing." He's like, "I'm joking." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, don't joke like that."
This woman holds the power for whether or not we could potentially be parents, and you're joking about these things.
He's got a good sense of humour, and I think I was just...
He's got a very dry sense of humour though, doesn't he? So you
really
need to know him quite well to know that he is actually joking, because he keeps a very straight face.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But she knew
okay, cool.
that I would not let that, and he was joking. But yeah, so things like that. And we're not allowed to have stones in the backyard. So,
okay. Choking hazard type of thing.
Well, yeah, or throwing, or who knows. They were those big river stones.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very unlikely to be a choking hazard because you can't get their mouth around that.
Well, not when they're infants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not sure I could fit one of those in my mouth.
Anyway, so we were deciding between that and grass. We'd only put them there because we wanted the option to... Because after we got our dog, Chloe, she obviously destroyed our garden bed.
Yeah.
And so we were going to decide whether when she's a bit older we'd plant stuff or put... Anyway, this made our decision that we're just going to put grass there, because that was one of her suggestions to us, that we could either just put plants or grass. And, so there's a few things like that, which is fine. And the one he'll probably have said is that we have an outdoor patio heater, but it's...
Oh, yeah, he did say.
she identified that we probably need to put that way because it could fall over. And she tried wobbling it and it wouldn't fall over. But obviously, you've got to be safe. So we don't take it flippantly. And
no, but you've got to find the funny side.
Yeah.
Now,
you do have to laugh.
Yeah. And I think he was saying as well about all of the baby proofing that you've had to do. And I know he was saying, I actually think the baby proofing has made the house more dangerous, because now he's pulling these things off and trying to chew them. So now all the baby proofing is becoming choking hazards and all those kinds of things.
We went a bit OTT because we were putting all the ones around the sharp corners.
Yeah.
But that's probably the one he was talking about, because then it drew the baby to, because it was right at their height. They wanted to pick it off.
Yeah.
So that we took that off, but the rest of the baby proofing we left on, because that helped, just the baby gates for the stairs and
oh yeah,
the
definitely.
latches for the cupboards and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
and he also said that there was an issue that the assessor raised a potential issue with your dog.
oh yes, that was a thing. So they're saying there wasn't, what they were trying to get at was if there was an issue or the dog looked like that, they might be aggressive towards the baby or the child, or the child has allergies, would you give it away? But it just wasn't clear to us what they were saying when they first said it. The way it was phrased, it sounded like, would you give up your dog to have a child? And it's like, well, we've already made that commitment to, like, we take commitments seriously. So we've already committed to looking after.
Yeah.
And we've got this bond with our dog. And so we wouldn't just give her away to get something better, because what message would that send to a child?
That's it. I'm not going to give away my C grade student to get an A grade student, so I'm not going to give away.
Yeah. So we clarified that with them, because obviously if Chloe did look like she was going to do anything, then we wouldn't be able to look at her the same way. But she's the most gentle dog, and they love each other, and they're so good with each other. But we don't leave them alone together. We're like full on monitoring. So that all worked out. So that bit of conversation and stress has all worked out.
Yeah. But I guess it just goes into that. How did it feel to have somebody have so much control over those aspects of your life?
Well, with the assessor, I think that was also why I was a bit nervous, because I was like, they're basically saying if I'm good enough. So I think for me that was like, it wasn't that they have control, but it was just more like, am I good enough? Like, I've gone through all this stuff, and you really feel prepared by the end of it.
But it must be really difficult, feeling as though that's that kind of loss of control that somebody else gets to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to be good enough parents or good enough to be parents, but also things that somebody else has control over, whether or not you have river stones in your back garden. Like, I've had river stones in my back garden when I had small children, and nobody came into my back garden and told me I couldn't have them.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just my philosophy. At least I can say I've met that standard.
Oh, yeah.
So at least I can say that I'm doing my best, and that I have put in place all these things. Yeah, you might not need to, like, something might not happen, but at least we're giving it every chance. And I didn't mind it. I was like, we'd baby proof anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and we were deciding about that anyway. So, but different people might have different philosophies to that, and at least having this conversation, people can prepare themselves.
Yeah. And that, as I said to you when I invited you to be a guest today, that's actually kind of the part of the purpose, is that if people are looking at adoption, to know what that process looks like. It's not that you just, you go in and they hand you an envelope full of babies for you to pick from. There's, that's really not how the process works. So I guess sharing some of the realities that are in it didn't occur to me that you would have to have 6 2-hour assessments in your home, going through things like how intimate you are with your partner. And like that, it blows my mind.
Yeah, and so you do feel this all in, because at least they know that you're serious and you're happy to put the child first and do the work. And there is limited children relinquished every year. So that's another thing that kind of goes through, because people ask questions, that there might only be, maybe, if you're lucky, if you're lucky, 5 local adoptions a year, and maybe if you're lucky, 5 international. But then obviously situations change and there might not be that. Like it's so limited because they work to support people.
Yeah. And was part of the process, were there any questions or anything around the age of the child that you were hoping to adopt? So, whether that's babies or children, is that part of the process?
Yeah, they do look at what kind of age group they feel that you would be able to care with, and they do ask you that. But a lot of people don't realise that with local adoption, it's basically babies, like early children. So the most common age is around 7 months, and that's the age at which our little boy was when we were placed with him, unfortunate enough. So they do cover that. There is permanent fostering, which people might hear about, which is fairly similar, where they might be older, or there's like obviously temporary fostering. There's not that many permanent fostering because I got a little tiny bit of information on that fostering as well, because I just wanted to get information on a lot of things at the time and
make as informed decision as possible.
Yeah, because you hear all these things, but then it's like, well, how true is everything? And it can change over time.
Yeah, definitely.
And another thing with applying for adoption, they also get 3 referees, and then they have to like answer like a booklet. There's like so many questions that they even ask, like about your background and how you were and how you are and what interactions you've had with children. And yeah,
it blows my mind. So you have to find 3 people. So did you choose friends or family members?
You have to choose professional, and then
so you have to
friends.
Choose somebody from work to fill this information in about you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So not only do you have to have your life examined by the assessors who come into your home, but you have to open that book up for professional colleagues as well.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. Like, that's amazing.
But everything's, I'm remembering that correctly, I think. Like, yeah, we had to have a professional, and then we had 2 personal friend referees between us.
Yeah. And they have to answer all sorts of questions around your background and your... This is not for somebody who...
Not for the faint-hearted.
No. Not at all. Like, you need to be really dedicated to wanting to have a child.
Yeah, it really gets you to think, are you going to put the effort in when they're born? Because it is a big job being a parent. It's a big job looking after a child.
It is. And look, I'm putting myself in your shoes of going, oh, right, so now after all of this, I now have to ask somebody I work with to be part of this process and friends to be part of this process. From the department's perspective, I can understand it. I can understand that this beautiful little baby, we need to make sure that they're being placed. We need to look after them. We're the only people that get to advocate for them. So, yeah, what can we do to make sure that they're going to have the best start in life? I can understand that, and I can understand that maybe you can fool the assessors, but to have 3 people independent to that as well, be able to stand up and say that you're decent people and deserve to be parents. I can understand the need for it, but wow. So you were going through the process of going to the information sessions and having the assessments done. I'm assuming that they deemed that you were put on the prospective parent list.
Yeah, so we went through all that. They write their report, and then they submit the report with your application and everything to the committee. So you have to wait for the committee to sit.
God, there's a committee as well.
Yeah.
Of course there is. I mean, it makes sense that there is. But...
Oh, yeah. And then they discuss and review whether you're physically, financially, mentally, everything that they've assessed, all the assessments, whether that you can be on the list. And then when you're on...
Do they give you... So did the assessor... It was the same assessor the whole way through?
Yeah.
And it was a female, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So did she give you any indication that you were likely to... that you had ticked all the boxes?
Yeah, so the assessor says whether that they assess you as competent or not, and you get to look at the report before it's submitted.
Oh, okay.
And then if you do have any real objections, they can slightly review it, but basically what they say goes.
Yeah.
Which is...
But I guess it gives you a thing of them, like if you see something in there, they've refused to remove river stones from their back garden, you can go, no, look, we've done it. So it gives you that kind of opportunity, I'm assuming.
Or if
I promise we didn't actually install a bungee cord from our yeah.
I was
like, I think it's a good idea.
I know.
Maybe when he's a bit bigger.
Oh man, he's
I am joking.
Everything.
Joking.
Yeah. I know. So yeah, it was so fun. So many funny moments. And then they when the committee reviews it, you get advised whether you've been allowed to be on the list or not. And then if they've accepted you, then another person goes through with you writing a bit of a blurb. I think of it like a dating profile. It's like
Tinder for parenting.
Yeah, choose us. So they give you a bit of a template of what you should include, a bit about you, so that the parents can choose.
Oh, so it is actually like that. The parents do actually get folders with prospective parents, and they get to
choose from 3, because otherwise it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So they must, like, they ask us all sorts of questions. So we were just like, yeah, whatever. We'll just answer.
Yeah.
Just go answer. Yep, here's all the information. And then they must give the parents something, because based on their answers and what suits the child, they pick the 3 closest matches.
Ah, right.
And then from that...
So it really is like dating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the relinquishing parent or parents, they choose. Yeah. And if it's only one parent, they have to obviously dispense with the other, but otherwise they have to really find both and really go through their process with both. And then, once they've chosen, then they give you a call.
So that is, I suppose that's really important, that if there is a dad that, so you've got a single woman, it's very unlikely that a potential dad could be out there in the community that his child has been put up for adoption without him knowing about it.
Yeah, they... Like, as I said, like, the department do everything to care for the children. So they do, like, they have to do everything to try and find that parent.
Yeah, for them to relinquish their rights.
Yeah.
So while all this was going on, you were also still going through the IVF process.
Yes. So they do allow it, but on the proviso that if you do get pregnant, you have to tell them, and then they'll pause everything. And you're not allowed to go through the process if you're placed with a child. Okay. So they used to say that you can't do IVF and this, but then you could be on the list and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So when we were going through the process, obviously you have to check them for up-to-date details and the current situation. But with us, that was what we were allowed to do, and we covered that with them. They asked us about that. We were very upfront and forward about all of that.
So before we go into the IVF stuff that was happening, how long ago was it that you actually started the process of IVF and adoption? So do you know what year it was that you started?
Yes. So we had our first IVF appointment in February 16, and we had our first adoption information seminar on June 16.
Oh, so that's 5 years ago now. Yeah.
And so you can make the process go as quickly as possible with the adoption stuff. Like you could potentially maybe get it done in a year and then to the committee, but it can take a little bit longer depending on your situation, or how quickly you book things in, and availability of seminars and things like that.
And how long did that take you? So you started, I think, did you say June 2016?
Yeah, so it took us till we had home visits in 18, and then so I think it was by June or August 18.
So 2 years.
That we did. But we were a bit delayed in that we hadn't quite lived together for the required time.
Okay.
So we had to wait, how many months was it? 3 months or 4 months? So we could have that required living time together, even though we were married.
Yeah.
And
you'd been together for a time before you got married, obviously.
Yeah, since 2012. So even though we'd been together that long and we were married, we still had to have lived together for the required time. And yeah, so ours was a bit delayed. So, and then we got the call and were placed with our boy in August 19, a year later.
So I definitely want to come to that because there's a whole story around that which I think is really exciting. But talk me through the IVF stuff first.
Yes. So we had our appointments. We did like all the checks, scans, blood tests, you name it. They check everything. And then we had counselling, cooling off, and that. And then we tried 2 times. The first one, we actually got pregnant, and then the following week they said it had miscarried. So you can imagine that was our first go, and we get all excited, and then the week later, sorry. But they can't control that. You can't control that. So we had that. Then the second one, I had a different doctor do the transfer, and they were not good.
Okay, I should know this because I've worked in women's health for 18 years. How do they do the transfer? So you had IVF, which means they take the...
Yeah, so depending on your process, that they'll say what you would do. So sometimes they try and do less invasive things, and the minimum. And then if you have to do IVF, then there'd be obviously egg collection and sperm collection. Then they put them together, and then they would do the transfer. You can do live transfer or frozen transfer, and then there's ICSI where they inject their egg. So there's so many different things. And then so the actual transfer, you take the medication that they tell you to take, and then on the day of the transfer, they tell me if this is TMI. They obviously...
No, I'm really nosy. I'm really interested. I'm literally on the edge of my seat. I don't know how they do this.
They obviously go through your vagina and transfer. They have a fluid that the embryo sits in, and then they squirt that in and transfer. Anyway.
Well, and I wasn't sure if they did do it. Oh, yeah, I had absolutely no idea how they did it. Like, that makes sense, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
So...
and... Yeah, anyway, so the second one that I knew what it was going to be like, but that was, anyway, so I spoke to them about that. So I'm not doing it unless my doctor does the transfer. So I spoke to them about that, and in a polite way, and then, so we did those 2, and then we were going to do the third one, and that's when we got the call out of the blue. I was at my desk at work, I see this call, having a break, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, tea break time.
So you're working full time at this point?
Yeah, full time, the whole time.
And so is your husband?
Yeah. And then I get a call, and it's from the department, and they're like, oh yeah, just calling to see if you're still happy to be on the list and how everything's travelling with you. I'm like, yes. I was actually going to call you soon to because it's been a year. We just want to confirm that we're still on there and how everything is going, and if there's anything else we need to do. She goes, well, actually, I was calling to say you've been chosen. I was like,
I think I might cry.
I'm like shaking like a leaf. I'm like, chosen? It's like, yes, you're able to come in tomorrow morning so we can talk to you. It's a 7-month-old boy, and your parent picked you, and we'd like to, tell you a bit more about the situation and the child. Can you come in tomorrow morning? And I'm like, yes. And I get on the phone and I'm like, Miles, Craig, sit down. I was there, rang my family. I'm like, sit down. I'm in shock. This is what we've had a call. Anyway, we go in the next morning.
What did Miles say?
And I was like, quick, get leave.
Yeah.
Talk to your boss. And
because your bosses must have obviously known that this was, and they were supportive.
Yeah, so they were. My bosses were so lovely. They knew because we had to go to some of the seminars, so I had to book some time off. They even put it under special leave, which is lovely. Anyway, so we booked the time off. We go in there in the morning. We ended up booking the whole day off, which was lucky because we get all the information. They say, take a moment to think about it. And if you are really keen and serious, you can meet the child and then you can tell us if you're ready to adopt. Anyway, so the next morning we go, get all the information. We sit in the car and I say, right, we need to decide, are we going to be parents or not? Like, most parents, they find out they're pregnant. And like, okay, well,
we're having a baby. We're doing this now.
And for us, this is like, okay, well, we've found out. And so are we like, if we're going to be parents, this is it. Like, are we going to do it? And then, could there be any potential things we have to support the child through, any difficulties, whether they be physical, like health issues or mental or other things that would have to. And I was like, well, then we just take it a day at a time. You just take the child as an individual. You just get all the support and you just do it. I'm like, let's do it. Anyway, so we said yes, we'd like to meet the little boy and go ahead, and we did, and we fell in love, and we met him every day. So in the meantime, we're like ringing our boss. It's like, I need time off. I have to meet him every day, and then we have to madly run around, get baby stuff, like a whole nursery.
That was so obviously you know your husband outside of this for something, and he came to an event that I was at, and he was kind of explaining that. I mean, he was still shell shocked when I was talking to him about it, and he showed me a photo and said, "We've got a 7-month-old baby boy." I was like, "How did that happen?" I just saw you a month ago and you didn't have a baby. Now you got a 7-month-old. But he was saying that it was, you were both still working and trying to see him every day. You had a very, very short window before he came to live with you.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a nursery ready or like any of the. Most parents have 9 months to get ready. Well, 7, 8 months to get ready for a child coming to live with them. How long did you have?
11 days.
11 days.
But they do a process. So the reason they get you to visit every day, so it's a slower transition for the child, because it's a big thing. The poor child has got used to being away from the birth mum.
Yeah,
that's a trauma in itself, and that's something that they will obviously live with. So you support them through that, and then they've bonded with the pre-adoptive foster parents. And then this is another change for them. So you take it slow. So that's why you visit them every day. It's also a chance so you get to know the child and the routine to make it as smooth as possible. This is for local. International adoption's different. And I don't have all that information.
Yeah. How long had he been with the foster family?
The 7 months. So they got him when he was 3 days old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that must have been difficult for him and for the family.
Yeah, so I cannot imagine what the relinquishing parents go through. It's such a massive thing, and my heart goes out to them and my thoughts, and I never judge. I always think, if I had to give something up or if I'd been through something, like, you just have to just be so considerate and just I'm forever grateful to be entrusted with this.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm assuming that you don't, but do you know why the birth parents relinquished?
Yes, and that's our son's story.
Yeah,
So
no.
It's his.
Yeah, no, I wasn't asking you to share.
No,
just
no,
wondered whether or not does that actually get shared with you, or whether or not that's
you do get told that, because obviously you have to prepare the child, and it's all open, and they mean that if the relinquishing parent feels comfortable, they choose the terms of that and how much contact that they would like, and whether that just be letters or visits or things like that, because it may be difficult for them.
Oh, I imagine it must be incredibly difficult for them.
Unimaginable.
Yeah.
So you go through that as well. And so you're always in contact with the department during this time, and they confirm how much visit, and then you obviously have to fill in all the paperwork and things like that, and get the room ready, and get everything ready for the child. And I was lucky to be able to take half days off.
But those half days off you were spending with the baby, weren't you?
Yes. And getting a few things ready.
I think, when I was speaking with Miles, he was kind of going, we were spending all the time we possibly could with the baby, and then running into the baby shops, 10 minutes before they were closing, or we've got a half an hour lunch break, quick, run in and get whatever you can, and just kind of leaving with arms full of trying to 11 days to get everything that you need for a baby.
All our family helped as well. So
it's really fortunate to have supportive family.
Yeah, so like we were kind of looking at stuff online, and like my mum and dad will go get stuff, and Miles's parents and all the our sisters and family, they all came with arms full of stuff that they collected from their friends, or that they had that their friends had returned to them, or whatever. So we were lucky we did have all that support, but then we were also madly running around. So it was a blur, but then obviously with new parents it probably is a blur. My husband jokes, these birth parents, they get 9 months or however many months to prepare, and
we only had 11 days.
11 days. But I said, but they'd still be in a blur at the beginning, and it is different. And I think it's his humour. He just
definitely.
So he wasn't meaning anything by that, but he jokes a lot.
Oh, but I totally understand that. I think that. So I have 3 children, and yes, after having babies, there is a blur, but it's a different blur because you have, you have had 7-8 months to get used to the idea that you're going to have a child, and you've got 7-8 months to get it all sorted and to let your work know that you're going to need time off, and you can't ever prepare for what new parenthood feels like, but you've got time to plan and to prep. And even though you'd had 2 years of planning and prepping, you hadn't, because you can't go out and get a nursery ready because you don't know if you're actually going to get a child. You don't know if you're going to have a boy or a girl. You don't know how old that child's going to be. It was literally a phone call in the middle of the day, and the next day it happened.
Yeah. And then you slowly, like during the transition, when you're meeting them, you slowly take over all the caring duties while you're there. So feeding, bathing, they do mixture of morning or afternoon, evening, things like that. And then
that must be pretty amazing. Like those pre-adoptive foster parents or foster families.
So amazing.
So to care for that child, but then to open their home so that you can come in and be part of that process.
And then they're obviously going to be grieving as well because they're bonded with the child.
That's it.
Honestly, we have been so blessed. Like our relinquishing parent and the department, all the people that we were involved with that, our pre-adopted, they just so amazing, and our beautiful boy is just so amazing.
So one of the things I wanted to ask is, so with that around the relinquishing parent, they get to, because it's open, they get to choose what kind of contact they have. How were you aware of? You must have been aware of that beforehand, and how does that feel?
So I've seen it as myself as the more people that care for my child, the better.
Yeah, beautiful.
They're just an extra family, extra friend, whatever they would like to be. And the child, if it was me, I think if I was adopted, I would want to know who, I put myself in and the most important thing is put yourself in the child's and the other people's point of views. Because if you were given up for adoption, you'd have questions. You want to know, who am I?
Yeah. Where did I come from?
Where did I come from? Why did they give me up? You'd have all these questions. And so I'm not afraid of that. And you have to really be not threatened. You have to help them with that, because it is important. And it is them, and it's not going to take away from you. You have to keep telling yourself that. It's actually going to add to your life.
Yeah.
You've had this beautiful, beautiful gift to help the child, and you, in a way, it's kind of selfish. You want to be a parent, but they are unfortunately unable to be with their relinquishing parent for whatever reason. And so that's a loss for them. Yeah. Yeah. And you've got to just always remember that. And so I just think of it as adding, and I just hey, this is what we're up to, those. I think of it like one of those Christmas letters. This is what we've done this year. We've done this and this and this. How are you going? And they cover what you should include about health and education and
milestones, I guess.
Milestones or funny things or little things that you want to share with them.
Do you keep a copy of those?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be quite nice as well for you to, because often when you are in that blur, we have, so many parents have baby books, but they don't get filled out because you're just too exhausted, or it's just, But if you are writing those and you've got that copy, that must be really lovely to be able to have those to show where he's been and those milestones and
and I was actually, I'm always in the evening on parenting things, like getting the most recent proper parenting advice, obviously through the department, going to any of those proper vetted courses. You don't just, some parent stuff on the internet can be dodgy, but
very much so. Yes.
Yeah, and so it has to be properly, I try and always get information.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly, how can I be better and how can I support through this? And you have to have a plan of how you're going to help them through it. And it's not a secret, but obviously it's theirs to share.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not ashamed of it, but obviously it's up to them because you're still their parents.
Yeah.
But they've also got a birth parent.
Yeah.
So they've got two. And every family, there's so many different family things, options now.
There really are. Yeah. And there's no such thing as a normal family. I think there's so many different families look really different in so many different ways. So tell me, so one of the things, like I said, I have 3 children. And we knew that we were expecting children. And so we had those 7-8 months to come up with names for our babies. You had 11 days.
Yeah, well, they just said, well, we were fortunate. Most of the time, the relinquishing parent chooses the first name. Whereas ours was different. Our relinquishing parent wanted to choose the middle name. And wanted us to experience being able to choose a first name, which was
that's
so
beautiful.
And we've thanked her for that. And it's just so lovely. And so then we had to think of a name, and then it was good because I was so all over the place in my mind, because I was okay, I've got to do this, and this. But I was so running around, and also in shock, getting used to that when our worker, our social worker, spoke to us, she said, "Oh, just let us know the name and then we can run it by." I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea to run it by the birth parent and see what they think, if it's going to trigger anything or whatever."
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, please," and send her our love. And so we spoke overnight, and in a way, I think it was actually good for us because it kind of, you just get all the decisions done. It can be overwhelming only having a limited time to get all that done, but then in a way, it's kind of good because then you don't waste time. You're just like, right, make a decision, bam, 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 done.
Yeah.
And
because it was quite time sensitive. You did only have a short amount of time to choose.
We got called on Monday. We found out information on the Tuesday, met him on the Tuesday, and then every day, and then by the following Saturday, he was with us. So we had on the Friday, he did a short 5-hour visit where we put him to a day's sleep at our house because he was having 3 naps at that stage. And
naps, I remember them.
Yeah, naps are good. Naps are good. If your child naps.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And stuff. Anyway, and spent time with us at our house, and then the next day they brought him over in closer to the evening, so around 4 o'clock, and he had dinner with us, and they say the best way to do the transition is that. But it really, our social worker was in contact with our pre-adoptive foster carer to see whether that was right, and then we had basically one overnight to think of a name, which was good, and yeah, we chose it, and then they happened to really like it, and so yeah.
And then, so the birth certificate, you're listed on his birth certificate now?
Yes. So what happens is, then when they're placed with you, you get a monthly visit for 6, so once a month for 6 months, so 6 visits spaced a month apart, to obviously see how they're settling in and how you're going, caring for the child and looking after the child and how bonded you are. So for the first month, you're not allowed to really see anyone. So you have to stay home, not go anywhere, not see anyone. You can have...
So you obviously took, is it maternity leave that you take?
Yeah. So I organised that in those...
In those 11 days?
Yeah. And then getting all my work done and everything like that.
Was Miles, did he take that whole month off as well?
No.
Okay.
He got 3 days.
No.
And then it was a week or two until the school holidays, and he had the 2 weeks. And then, because he's a teacher.
Yeah.
And then, it was me.
Wow.
So, yeah, and so they do the visits, and then the assessor either they either sign off on you or I don't know, they go through a process if you're not meeting everything. But luckily we passed.
Ticked all the boxes.
And then you go through the process of...
Was that nerve-wracking?
No, well, I didn't find it as nerve-wracking as the assessor.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just more that I just don't, I'm very shy. I don't like being assessed.
Yeah.
So that was fine. And then every time she might bring something and to show us or talk about, and then obviously she just enjoyed getting to see Cameron, because obviously he was happy and having fun, and that was a good thing to see. And then they sign up, and then you fill in all you have to apply. So you go through the courts to apply for adoption.
Do you actually go to court for that?
Yeah, well, we chose a lawyer, and then you submit all the applications. So you don't actually have to go into a courtroom. You just file it through the courts and that. So we went through a lawyer for that, and and then when that all comes back, you can then go and apply for a new birth certificate. And
And do you celebrate, like, really important things? Do you celebrate twice a year? So do you celebrate his birthday and then his coming to live with you day?
So, I mean, there's two schools of thought, but we do obviously celebrate his birthday because that's his birthday. That's when he was born. And then we kind of have a family day.
Yeah.
Where we just do something special as a family on the day that he was placed with us.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we can, you know, look at that. And you always, you know, we have photos available for him to look at and his story. And he's met his birth mum, but everyone's different. And yeah, so you can have kind of like a family day, people call it.
What do you call her?
We call her his tummy lady at the moment because of his age.
Yeah.
And then obviously it'll progress to birth mother.
Yeah.
And then if they develop a relationship as things go, then he can work it out with her.
Yeah. As he gets older. Yeah.
Yeah, we call his pre-adoptive foster mum auntie.
Ah, nice.
And we explain to him that you got to stay with auntie while your tummy lady, because it's a bit confusing for them if you say mum at the end. While your tummy lady was choosing mummy and daddy, and then mummy and daddy were chosen, and when your mummy and daddy forever and ever and ever, you can't get rid of us. Because then they're not scared, like, and then they understand.
Yeah.
And and say special bond with her, and yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Would you choose to adopt again?
If you do go through it again, you can choose. You have to go through the process again, but it's a tiny bit shorter. So you don't have to go through the seminars again if it's within a few years. And then, but you still would have a meeting with them, which is kind of like in lieu of a seminar.
Yeah.
And then you would fill in the forms to apply again. They do all the checks again. So medical, financial, health, obviously, you know, police clearance checks, you name it. They do all the checks again, and you pay $1,000 to be reviewed again. And instead of 6 visits, you'd have 3 visits, and they really focus on reviewing any of the stuff, but then also seeing how, if the two children have different stories, and one relinquishing parent wants more contact than the other, like, how do you manage that? And then if they have different issues or they don't get
I don't know how you manage any of that. Like, it's all beyond my, the way you manage it sounds beautiful, but it's all beyond my scope of imagination. I had not thought of
so you have to
most
really
of the things that you had said. Yeah.
And protective details, like, you know, making sure you put in place protective boundaries so that it can limit the chance of abuse. And honestly, the amount of stuff they go through, you really feel prepared. And I just see it like that because you have to. You know? So you really have to look at that. And in the seminars, you actually hear from like a relinquishing parent, an adoptive person, pre-adoptive foster. So you get a bit of a story from their perspective, each of the perspectives.
I tell you what, that must take some guts for that relinquishing parent to stand up in front of that group of people. Yeah,
and luckily they've been able to, you know, keep in contact, but and they felt that they would be able to share the story.
Comfortable to share that.
Yeah, and as part of that, they'd already kind of touched on if you adopted again, because, you know, that can cause a few issues, particularly as they're getting to adolescence or they're getting to stages where they're thinking about that, or why do their parent is more than my parent. So you've got to really prepare yourself for that. And at this point, we felt we don't want to. I don't want to take people away from it. A lot of people do adopt again. And sometimes that's a pro. Yeah. Like a relinquishing parent might want someone with another sibling. Yeah. So if you are able to have biological children, you can still adopt. But people might not necessarily think about that. But then it honestly depends on individuals.
Yeah.
So
And that's it. It is a really individual story, and your story is unique to you, most definitely. It's just, I just haven't ever talked to anybody who's gone through this process before. So it's been really eye-opening for me.
And hopefully you can see that there are many aspects for people to consider, and it's no one right thing. Obviously, the department does all their checks, but if you feel comfortable, then you can, and you've adopted, you can apply to adopt again.
Yeah.
As long as you're within the age range.
What is the age range?
Please check correct details with the department. From my recollection, I think you have to be under age 45 to first adopt, and then you've got maybe an extra, the upper limit goes up to an extra 5 or 10 years after that. But do check the correct ages with the department. And you do have to go through the process anyway, and they'll give you up-to-date details. So
yeah. Oh, wow. So a couple of very quick questions. You spoke about preparation for parenting. Did you feel prepared to be a parent?
I mean, I'd gone through all that stuff, and I just was like, you just jump into it.
Yeah. Was there anything? I think you spoke as well about some of the additional trauma that children who have been relinquished experience. Did you do anything extra to be prepared for parenting a child who has experienced trauma?
Well, they go through that in the seminars as well.
Mm-hmm.
So separation and adoption, preparation for adoptive parenting, things like that. And so they kind of cover that. And when you're going through the assessment, they go, well, how will you explain it to them? How will you support that with them? What resources will you access? And so you kind of go through that with them. I actually went to an adoptive playgroup as well.
Well, that was my next question. Do you meet with other parents who have adopted as well?
Yeah, so we were encouraged to do that, but I wanted to do that anyway because I was like, I wanted to get out and talk to people. But
with similar and shared experiences.
Well, yeah. So there are lots of resources out there.
How long did you end up taking off work?
I took 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I had that opportunity, and we with my work and also with us financially. So yeah. Yeah.
So which gave you that solid 2 years to be able to really bond with him beautifully, I imagine.
Yeah.
When you meet people, do you tell them that he's adopted, or do you is that part of how you identify yourself? Does it become part of your identity?
As I said, I'm not ashamed of it. I don't hide it, but then you don't have to tell every single person.
I don't need a flashing light above my head either.
Yeah, and it was so weird. Like when I told my boss, I've just got this call. I've been chosen to adopt. Our learning and development officer said, "Oh, I'm adopted," and I was like, "I never knew that."
Yeah.
And then our contact centre manager said, "Oh, I'm adopted." I was like, "Yeah." So, if we're close enough, I might say, and obviously our close friends obviously all knew.
Yeah, because you rocked up with a 7-month-old the next day.
Yeah. But other than that, you don't just tell Joe Blow in the street, you know.
And that's probably so. One of the reasons that I invited you to be a guest here today is because there are so many people who experience it, but again, you don't need it as a flashing light above your head and above your head or above your child's head, which means that I think it can be really powerful to hear other people that have gone through this and what that experience can be like. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
My pleasure.
If you were talking to somebody who was considering adoption, do you have any advice for them?
You have to go in with a sense of humour. You have to just, what I've said, you have to focus on the child. And you really realise you're kind of doing it for because you want something.
Yeah.
I think just arming yourself with this information would help. I think that's the main things, because you go through a lot of it in those seminars. In the seminars.
Yeah. And how does it feel being a mum?
Oh, it's really good. It's like any parent. You have your days where you're a bit tired, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. And any other final thoughts before we wrap up today?
It's just whether you're not a parent, you're not a mum, whether you'd like to be a mum and you're not able to, whether you've gone through some losses, any aspect of being a woman just is beautiful, and life's an adventure. Don't stress. You'll work through it, get support, and enjoy.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for sharing so much about your story. I do really appreciate it, and it was absolutely fantastic to chat to you today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.